Okay. Now recording is started. So
Okay. Okay. So should
hello.
we start now? Are you able to hear me, Harsh?
Yes.
Okay. So let's begin. Good morning, everyone. Hope you are doing well. So the topic of the today's session is basics of machine learning and its application in cybersecurity domain. So first of all, a disclaimer, I have just started working in machine learning since few months. Okay, and it is really hard to accommodate, each and every concept of machine learning into an hour session. So, I will just be giving you an overview about the concepts of the machine learning, and then we will be moving on to the cybersecurity domain where we can say that, which are the use cases on which we can apply machine learning. Okay, and meanwhile, while taking lecture, in case if you have any questions in between, if you don't understand any concept, please feel free to stop me and ask any question. Okay, I hope my voice is audible to you people, right? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
yes,
Jaydeep. Yes,
Yeah,
Okay,
you
yes,
are
sir.
audible.
good. Okay, so
Yes, then
yeah,
we can
let us.
take. You can.
Okay, so the topics for today's session is, we'll be discussing few things about what is AL, ML, DL, and other things, and then we'll be, discussing what is our traditional approach in detecting certain threats, and what is the machine learning approach, what is the difference between them, and what are the advantages of machine learning over the traditional approach. Then we have some puzzles so that you can get a better understanding that how machine learning, when we say machine learning, generally we see that it is correlated with how our brain functions, right? So yeah, we will be seeing that part also, and then we will be moving to the different use cases and how machine learning can be applied. Okay, so before we start, like, anyone would like to answer that what is machine learning, AI, according to your view? Anyone? See, this will be like a kind of an interactive session, the way we used to do in our classes, right? I will ask some questions. Feel free to give a feedback, and then kind of brainstorming session. I don't want it to be I will be speaking and you people will be listening. Let's keep it interactive. So yeah, the way we used to do in class. Anyone? Hello.
So
Yeah, please go ahead.
good morning, sir. So my idea of this one is machine learning is something which is required for
Mm-hmm.
any system to be called as an artificial intelligence by itself. So
Mm-hmm.
if a system needs to act as an artificial intelligence or it has to deal with situations, it needs to implement the concepts of machine learning so that
Mm-hmm.
it can successfully go forward and start thinking by itself before taking or making some decisions.
Okay. Good.
And deep
Any
learning
other?
is
Yeah, please continue.
in deep learning, what I have understood is where we understand that how a system is supposed to learn and
Mm-hmm.
what information is supposed to be given. So it's not exactly like supervised or non-supervised.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more about what sort of machine learning is being used for a system to understand it.
Okay. Good. Anyone else would like to add upon? Anyone? Okay. Next time, let's see. Okay. So the next slide we are discussing. Oh, it is a typo over
Jaideep,
here.
just a second.
Yes.
Just a second. Like in meantime, if any one of you have any questions, you can write in chat rather than unmuting yourself, so that whenever possible, Jaideep will try to solve those queries. So just write
Okay.
your questions in the chat.
Yeah. Actually, I will not be able to see the chat. So, moderator,
No,
if
I will
any,
read
like,
it for
can.
you.
Oh,
I
yeah.
will read it
Okay.
for
Sure.
you. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I will read
Okay.
it for you after the session ends. No problem.
Okay. Good. And in between also, if you have any queries, you can, drop in the chat, and then Harsh will, kind of interrupt and we can discuss the questions. Okay. Okay. So there is a typo over here. It is not AL, it is AI, right? So if you see in the slides, it is showing that, the AI, that is artificial intelligence, is the superset, and it incorporates your machine learning, and machine learning incorporates your deep learning, right? So what is artificial intelligence? So out of these three terms, artificial intelligence was the term which was coined earlier, right? So what artificial intelligence basically is that it says that, any piece of code which can act as a kind of a human brain can be called as an artificial intelligence. So at that time there were some rules which were written, which were a piece of code which were written which used to emulate as a rule, and which was helping humans to solve the problem. For example, a chess game, right? So if you see the chess game, there are certain rules that each and every player has certain way of moving on the chess board, right? So that certain rules were there, certain boundaries were there for each and every player on the chessboard, right? So accordingly, if you write the rule and if it emulates a kind of human brain behavior, that will be known as an artificial intelligence. So in that particular era, there was nothing like learning. And then the term came which was known as machine learning as the science progresses. So in machine learning, what we are doing is we are giving ample amount of data to the piece of code, and that piece of code will write a rules, will form the rules, and that rules will again help us to take the decision or help us to solve the problem. So because the learning was included by the code, so that, the term came up was machine learning. So deep learning, definitely we will also be seeing the deep learning. What is the difference between machine learning and deep learning in the next slides. So today the focus of the session will be on machine learning and deep learning. Okay, we'll not be touching upon artificial intelligence. Yeah, so let us discuss what is the difference between machine learning and deep learning. So if you see traditional machine learning, there is an input, let's say the car, and we have something called feature extraction. So in feature extraction, what you will do is, let's say if you are giving input as in car, so car will be having certain feature in the sense, let's say 4 tires, 1 steering, glass windows. So what you will be doing is, before feeding the data into the machine learning algorithm, you will be manually extracting out those features, and those features will be given as a part of input to your algorithm, and then that particular algorithm work upon, and then you will be the algorithm will train itself and will produce the desired result. Whereas in deep learning, because we have more number of data, what we are doing is we are avoiding the feature extraction. We are directly giving it the input to the machine learning algorithm, and your algorithm itself will decide that which are the features and which are not the important kind of features, right? So I hope this is clear to everyone that the fundamental differences in machine learning, we need to do feature extraction, whereas in deep learning we do not have to do feature extraction. The other fundamental difference is that in traditional machine learning algorithm, you can apply it to those problems where you have very less amount of data, because you are manually extracting the features and you are feeding into it. So if you have less amount of data, you can go for machine learning, and if you have huge amount of data, then you can go for deep learning. I hope this is clear to everyone till now. If you have any questions, you can ask. No, right? Okay, good to go. Yeah. So let us see what is the traditional approach, traditional programming approach, and what is the machine learning approach. So if you see on the slide, in classical programming, what we used to do was we used to feed in the rules, we used to feed in the data, and we used to get the answers. Whereas in machine learning, we will be feeding data, we will be feeding the answers, and we will be getting out the rules. So let me give you an example. So let's say if you have a pcap file, right? So your data will be pcap file. Your rules can be your snort rules, because you have already written the rules. So the answers will be whether there is a malicious code in it or not. Based on the snort rule and based on the data which you are injecting, your snort engine will decide whether any of the data content is meeting that particular rule or not, right? So that is your classical programming. Whereas in machine learning, what can happen is you will be feeding in various pcap files, and you will be, let's say you have a label that this particular pcap file is a benign is non-malicious file, and let's say this particular file is a malicious pcap file, right? So that will be your answers, or you can say in a way labels, and then you will be feeding that particular data and answers to the machine learning algorithms, and your machine learning algorithms will come up with the rules. So next time the situation will be different, that the rules which has been formed by the machine learning, you will be applying onto the real-time cases, and then those machine learning algorithm, the rules which has been formed by machine learning algorithms will help us to identify the answers for the new coming data, right? So what is the, if you see on the left hand side, function f is returned by an ML model. And once we have a function f which has been returned by the machine learning model, then we can feed in the new data to that particular function, and then we can get an expected desired output, whether the pcap file is malicious or not malicious, right? Okay. So this again explains the same thing. We need to identify a problem, then we need to write the rule, and then we evaluate whether the rule which we have written is correct or not, whether it is giving us the desired result or not. If not, we again analyze it, we again rewrite the rules, right? When we feel that with the rules which we have written is kind of good, then we stabilize those rules, and then we inject those rules into the production environment so that we can get a desired output. Same goes with the machine learning algorithms, but we will not be writing the rules manually. In fact, as discussed in the earlier side, we will be feeding in the data and let machine learning algorithm write the rule, and then we will be checking whether the rule which has been written by the machine learning algorithms, whether it is fitting, whether it is good in our environment or not. If it is good in our environment, we will be pushing those rules to the production environment. If not, we will be again reanalyze the thing, and we will fine tune the machine learning algorithm in a particular way so that we can get a desired rule which will produce the desired result. Okay, any question till now, guys? Anyone? Okay, good to go. Yeah, so this again is an example. If you see machine learning and analytics rule, right? So the goal, if you see, is discover and utilize pattern in the data, because in this era we have lots of data, right? And there is definitely pattern which is hidden in that particular data. We human brain might not be able to identify that pattern, but if you feed those things to the machine, definitely machine might be able to identify the patterns, and that is what we want to leverage using machine learning and deep learning algorithms. Okay, so the goal is to discover and utilize pattern in the data. For example, predicting whether an insurance claim is fraudulent based on the data about the claim. So what this particular thing will enable? It will enable two things. First is AI, or artificial intelligence, and second is you can automate certain robotic process. So in AI, if you look, the goal is enable machine to autonomously perceive, reason, and act. Example they have given: Amazon Alexa responding to voice command to play your favorite song. So now what Alexa is doing is, whenever you say Alexa play this particular track, so when you say the word Alexa, right, and when that particular voice command reaches to that piece of hardware, that hardware will analyze. When you say Alexa, it is a trigger word for that particular code which has been coded into that particular hardware. The rest of the word which follows the Alexa word will be analyzed by that particular hardware. So there will be an algorithm which will be fed into that particular hardware, and whatever you speak will be recognized. So it is basically your speech recognition, right? And basing on your speech recognition, your Alexa will decide what to act upon. So that is basically your artificial intelligence component of artificial intelligence which is getting involved, right? And the second thing, if you see, what we can achieve is robotic process automation. So here they have given an example of SIEM. So in analytics rule, if you look on the left hand side, basically generally in SOC Central, what you do is you write your manual rules, right? And if certain data fits that particular rule, or it matches that rule, it will give you an alert, right? Same thing goes here. If you apply the same, if you give the same data to your machine learning algorithm, your machine learning algorithm can also write rules, and when certain data matches that particular rule, it will give you a trigger. So if you see the ideal manual approach which we take is basically writing the SNOT rules, writing Yara rules, writing Splunk alerts. Whereas in machine learning, many of you might have also seen that in Splunk and Elasticsearch, they are also giving machine learning plugins, right? So what that plugins do is they identify the anomalous behavior. Okay, so what is anomalous behavior? What you do is you form the baseline. So baseline is what is normal for you, right? And if something goes abnormal, that will be an anomaly, that should be a red flag. So we'll be discussing that in depth in the later slides. But for time being, I hope this is clear to you. Okay, now let us do a small exercise. So as I told you that, for machine learning, what we will be doing is we will be feeding two things. One is data and one is the answers. So on the left hand side, the table which is mentioned, if you see F1, the F1 denotes the feature 1, F2 denotes the feature 2. In between there is relation, that is question mark, and R is your result, right? So let's say you are feeding data 1 and 2, a pair of 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4. That is your data, and R is your result, right? So can anyone tell me what should be the relation based on the in the first table? If you see, what should be the relation?
Addition.
Addition, simple addition, right? Why you were able to answer? Because your brain has been trained in such a way, right? When you see the data, basing you find certain pattern in it, right? And then based on that pattern, you made a rule that the addition is the relation between the two features, right? So when now if I give you two input, 7 and 8, definitely your answer will be 15. So this is how your brain works, and this is how your machine learning algorithm will work. Now, can anyone identify what is the relation on the right hand side? The table in the right hand side?
Multiply and add 1.
Multiply of feature 1 and addition of feature 2. Is it? Right? So if you see first feature, 1 into 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. 2 into 2, that is 4, plus 3 is equal to 7. Right? So this might be hard at first instant, but if you look more and more data, you will be able to interpret that this is the relation. But if you look to the first entry in both the tables, both the entries are same, right? So looking at the first entry in both the tables, you won't be able to judge correctly that what exactly is the relation. It can be the first relation, that is of addition. It can be the second relation, that is the squaring of feature 1 and then the addition of feature 2, right? So how then you are able to interpret which is the correct relation? So you have more and more data, then you will be able to interpret that yeah, this is the correct rule, right? So same goes, many a times we come across certain puzzles. So we first try to fit in this whether the rules which our brain is interpreting is correct or not. So how you validate? You pull in some extra data and you will validate that whatever your brain has interpreted, whether it is correct or not, right? So this is how it works. So in machine learning also, if you feed more and more data, your machine learning algorithms will get more and more clarity, and it will be able to write better rules. Okay, so again, let me clear it. So rules will not be so it like machine learning algorithms will be a kind of a black box. So you won't be able to see what rules it has written. Okay, and you won't be able to interpret the rule which you the way you interpret your snot hard-coded rules, right? So that way you won't be able to interpret machine learning algorithm rules which the algorithm has made for itself, right? Okay, one more puzzle. Now if you see, there are 9 inputs, right? Right, so what I want you to do is I want you to form a pair, like if you think that there is some relation between let's say 1 and 2. So I want the justification also, that based on what logic you told that this particular data point fall in the same group and the other data point fall in the other group. So there can be multiple group. So this is your data set. Just do some brainstorming and let us then discuss. Let us see your brain is able to find any pattern in it or not. Meanwhile, let me check if you have any question in the chat box. Okay, 1 and 3, 5 and 8, 4 and 6. I want justification also, if you can provide.
Characters are same but are in the different positions.
Which one? Can you repeat?
Yeah, 1 and 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, characters. Any others? Let us see. Ordering is changed. Okay, characters are same. Okay, yeah, I need to show you the screen, right? Yeah. Take few more minutes and then we can discuss. Okay, let us discuss. Let us see chat. 189, any data starting with same character MN. Okay, you can share just the PPT with selecting PPT. Okay, no worries. Now we don't have this puzzles. Okay, so we have few patterns which you people have observed. Okay, let us see the solution. Yeah, so this, if you see, is the solution that first 4
So
and
I have
8
sent
form. Sorry.
I have sent a text. Can you please check if that's right?
Yeah, we'll discuss it on the screen. Okay, so 1, 4 and 8 will form a one group. Second and ninth will form a second group. 3, 4, 6 will form the other group, and 7 again will stand alone. So if you see now, what I have done is I will not be able to show you the cursor, but if you see UW, if you just look at the cheat sheet, right? So what I have done is, in the first sample, the first and the third character has been taken. If you see the last second row of the cheat sheet, U and W has been taken. And then what I have done is I have taken the same character, that is first and third, from the above instance, Q and S. And then there is 7, 9, a numeric value. And then what again I did, I took the later part of the last second part, that is WX. Now you can observe the similar pattern in 4th instant and 8th instance, if you see, right? While if you look into the second instance, if you see in numerical character, the first character is greater than the second character, right? In first group, if you look, the first numerical character is lower than the second numerical character, whereas in the second group, the first numerical character is greater than the second numerical character, right? So that is one of the change, but there is underlying pattern also. So what I am trying to convey over here is basically that, when you look at the data, your human brain will, figure out certain patterns, right? Now, based on the IQ of different person will be able to identify different patterns. Now, not necessary that, a single person will be able to identify each and every pattern, right? Based on the IQ. So there can be multiple pattern in the data. A particular group of person, if that person looks through that particular data, they will be able to figure out certain pattern. The other group can figure out certain other pattern, and there can be some common pattern also, which can be figured out by both the group, right? So here the point of using machine learning is that if you feed more and more data, because that is machine and not a human brain, so machine will be able to figure out most of the pattern in it, right? So that is the reason that that is what we want to leverage from machine learning algorithms. We want to identify each and every underlying pattern that can help us to solve the problem. I hope I'm making a good point over here, right? Okay, again, the other thing which I would like to discuss here is, so while training, if I want to train this 9 instance, I can do two things. First is supervised approach and second is unsupervised approach. So what is those? Let us understand. So if I want to feed this 9 instance, what I can do is, for first, 4th and 8th instant, while I am feeding the data to the algorithms, I will also mention a label that it falls into group 1. When I feed second and 9th instance, I will also attach a label that it falls into group 2. And same goes for third group and fourth group. Along with the instance of that particular data, I will also attach a label that, this particular thing will fall in this particular group. And then that machine will get a learning that, this pattern, if I find this particular pattern, it belongs to group 1. If I find this particular pattern, it belongs to group 2. Because we are also giving that particular, labeling, this particular approach will be known as supervised approach. Okay. Now, instead of giving label, if I passed this kind of raw data, right, without any labels, and if I ask a machine that, I want to form 3 unique groups, the machine will be able to figure out 3 groups. So in that instance, your 7th instance, because we are only giving output as 3 groups, we are not asking machine to form 4 groups, we are asking machine to form 3 groups. So in that case, the instance number 7 will fall in any of the one group, right? Based on the we'll see that how those things also work when we see that how the data can be graphically plotted onto a 2D map. Okay, but I hope this is clear. What is the supervised approach and what is the unsupervised approach? So in supervised approach, you feed in the labels, and in unsupervised approach, there is no label, right? And then you ask machine learning algorithms to find out patterns and find out the groups. Okay. So now let us see, typically there are, again, if you refer different books, they have different kind of categorization, but, generally it is supervised, unsupervised and reinforcement learning. So reinforcement is basically, there are certain certain states. So basically, your self-driving car and those things fall under reinforcement learning, and it is basically your continuous learning part. So we'll not be touching that today, but our focus will be more with supervised, unsupervised, and machine learning and deep learning approach. Okay. So if you see on the right hand side figure, there are certain algorithms which has been written. Now again, one more thing which I would like to highlight, if you see in supervised shallow learning, there are different algorithms, right? So what we just did in the last exercise, I asked you to figure out certain patterns, right? And let's say 5 or 6 people replied to my question. So what I did was, I did an ensembling learning. So ensembling learning is basically, let's say there are different algorithms of machine learning, right? Now, the way of working, the fundamental of mathematics for each and every algorithm will be different, right? So what I am doing is, I will feed the data to algorithm 1, I will feed the same data to algorithm 2, I will feed the same data to algorithm 3. So all 3 algorithms will give me some results, right? And because their fundamental way of working is different, okay? So what I can do at the end is, I can collect the results from all 3 algorithms and I can, average out the results. So that will give me a better result, because, algorithm 1 will be looking the data from a particular perspective, algorithm 2 will be looking at data from the second perspective, algorithm 3 might be looking at data from some other perspective, right? So it is like, taking opinion from a different people, because each and every people will have their own, what we call perception about the particular problem statement, right? So yeah, that is the same thing. We take we take opinion from the multiple people. Similarly, we take opinion from multiple algorithms, and that technique will be known as ensembling technique, and that is kind of more effective, because loophole of algorithm 1 can be covered by loophole of algorithm 2 and vice versa. Okay, but again, it is costly, because instead of training one algorithm, you need to train multiple algorithms. So if there is pro, there is if there is advantage, there is disadvantage also. Yeah. So any questions till now? Anyone? Any questions? Okay, good to go. Yeah. Now there is something called decision boundary. So what is decision boundary? So basically, whenever you feed any data, the data will be, you can plot the data into a 2D graph. So let's say, instead of 2 features, if you have multiple features, there are certain algorithms in machine learning wherein you can reduce the size of those feature and then you can plot on the graph. The way, if you see in the left hand figure, let's say if you have 2 features, this is how you can plot. And your model, as I told you that, the output of the model will be the function. So here, if you see the dotted line, that is your decision boundary, basically. That is your function which has been generated by machine learning algorithms. And that is how you are able to differentiate that, whether it will fall on the green part or whether it will be fall on the yellow part. right? So that is your decision boundary. Now any new instance X which is coming, now it will try to plot on the graph and it will get an understanding that, you know, whether it is lying on the left hand side of the decision boundary or it is lying on the other side of the decision boundary, and then based on that it will try to label the new coming instance. I hope I am making sense, right? And on right hand side, if you see, there are three different images. You know, first and third is almost same, and the middle one is a straight line, right? Now again, it depends on the algorithm which you choose for your problem statement. First and the third, the, you know, curve, if you see, that is your polynomial curve, and the middle one, if you see, is your straight line, right? So that is your linear algorithm which you have chosen. And in the first and the third cases, you have chosen your what we call polynomial algorithm. So in polynomial, definitely you have some flexibility. So in a way, you can say that, you know, your model will be more flexible and your decision boundary will be more flexible compared to your linear model. And yeah, definitely the result can be good with polynomial compared to your linear, right? So it is not necessary that each an algorithm will be suitable for your problem statement. So you need to check, you need to understand the type of problem, and then you need to apply, you need to choose which algorithm suits your problem statement. Yeah. So now coming that, you know, what are the different stages when you want to apply machine learning algorithm? First, you need to identify your problem statement. So again, we will be discussing what can be the problem statement in cybersecurity domain. And then we will be, you know, doing some brainstorming that how algorithm can prove effective than our manual approach. So once you identify the problem statement, then you identify data set. So what is data set exactly? So in corporate environment, if you recall, whenever a new product comes, so what we do is we do POC, that is proof of concept, right? So let's say if my organization is having 1,000 website, and if a new product which is coming, which is a web product, web application firewall, right? So what I will do is I will do POC on, let's say, 5 website, and I will check whether the new product which, you know, vendor is trying to sell me is effective or not. So what I will do is I will put that particular device in between, you know, my traffic which is coming from the internet, and in between web server and the traffic which is coming from the internet. I will monitor it for, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks, and then I will see whether the solution is effective or not. If the solution is effective, then definitely we will apply it in the production, and we will apply to each and every site, right? So same goes here. When you identify problem statement, you need to check which algorithm will be more suitable, what will be the, you know, computing speed, what will be the latency in identifying or resolving that problem statement. So what you are trying to do is you are trying to do kind of POC for this particular you know, problem statement. So for that, you definitely require dataset. Dataset in this term that for 1,000 website, if you are taking 5 website as testing your web application firewall, similarly to test your problem statement, you are taking a piece of data which is similar to your problem statement. Okay, so let's say if you are trying to identify SQL injection, right? So what you will do, you will connect lots of payload which will have a normal payload to the parameters, and you will also collect the malicious payload to the parameter, let's say SQL injection payloads, right, which is, let's say, generated by your SQL map. So that will form your data set. Once your data set is ready, or you identify your data set, the next thing is your pre-processing. Again, that is not easy, because if we have seen that, you know, if you apply machine learning algorithm, you need to do pre-processing. So in pre-processing, you will be cleaning up the things. So let me show you an example. You know, enough of theory. Okay. This, I guess, most of us have seen, right? Yeah. So let's say if we have one PCAP file, right? So I cannot, you know, directly feed the PCAP file into an algorithm, right? So I need to pre-process this particular PCAP file. So what I can do, most of you might have learned in the networking you know, subject that, you know, there is something called metadata conversions, right? So here, if you see layer, any questions? Someone is unmuted. Okay, good to go. So here, if you see at layer 4, we are able to get this metadata. So this is basically your conversation records, right? So in this particular PCAP file, there are this many conversations. So, you know, so conversation is basically, if you see, this is a combination, you know, source IP, source IP, source port, destination IP, and destination port, right? So for this particular flow record, we have this metadata that from direction A to B, this many packet has been transferred. In the opposite direction, this many packet has been transferred. This many byte has been transferred. This is your metadata. What was the duration for that particular flow? We can also identify. So this is your metadata. So if you have PCAP file, you need to generate this kind of metadata, and then you will be feeding this into your algorithm, right? So again, you need to be very careful that which all features will you choose, because let's say in your pre-processing step you might be able to extract out 100 features, but not necessary that each and every feature will be contributing in identifying the pattern, right? So again, you need to be very cautious about selecting the feature, and hence it is kind of not easy, because you need more of domain knowledge. You need to be good at understanding your problem statement so that you'll be able to choose the right features. And then after selecting the features, you will be choosing the right algorithm. As discussed in the last slide, in some of the problem, your linear algorithm will be good. In some of the problem, your polynomial thing will be good, right? So it depends. And then after applying the algorithm, you will be choosing that, whether the algorithm which you have applied, what is the success rate or how much accurate that particular algorithm is. So based on the evaluation metrics. So evaluation metrics is basically you will be able to identify that, if let's say if the instant was malicious, whether the algorithm is able to tag as malicious or it failed to tag as a malicious. So that is how you judge the accuracy of an algorithm. Okay. And then you try to optimize. So optimize is basically, let's say if you have selected 100 feature for your algorithm, right? So after evaluation, let's say if you find that now the algorithm is kind of stable, then what you are doing is you are trying to optimize. So out of that 100 features, you will try to see that which are the most effective features. Let's say out of 100 you find that only 15 features are effective, and if I remove the rest of the 85 features, I'm getting almost same accuracy. Then definitely I will try to optimize. I will try to remove that 85 features, and I will train my model with 15 features only. Now why this is important? Because it is saving your time of training. It is also saving your time in terms of your computation cost, right? Any questions till now? Anyone? Let me just visit the chat room. Okay. How can we identify if the traffic is encrypted? Okay, definitely a good question. We will be coming to that once we discuss that some use cases of it. And yeah, if you look this particular example, whether the traffic is encrypted or not, that doesn't matter, right? Because this is the metadata. Okay, so now let's just see each and every stages in detail. So what can be the problem statement? Now we are shifting to the cyber security space. So this thing can be your problem statement. I mean, these are the problems which can be easily solved by your machine learning algorithm. We can easily detect SQL injection on web application, identifying malicious traffic generated by, let's say, some tool like Metasploit or some other tool, identifying botnet traffic in your organization's traffic, identifying malicious binaries, detecting whether website is genuine or phishing website, detecting whether the traffic hitting our website is human generated or it is machine generated. Sounds good? So now I have listed 4 problem statements. I want you to tell me, now we have discussed some of the concept of machine learning, which are the other problem statement do you think in cybersecurity domain where we can apply our machine learning concepts and we can get some good results? Any example which is coming in your mind at this stage? Come on, I hope I have explained it fair.
Email is spam or not spam?
Right, that is one of the older use case. Yes, email, whether the email is spam or not spam. Yeah. Okay. 3 more I need use cases or problem statement from your end.
What about can it be used for detection of shellcode or malicious APIs in Windows?
Yeah, definitely, yes. Because that sequence matters, right? In which sequence, the communication is happening, yes, there can be hidden pattern in it for sure. Yeah, any other examples?
Okay.
Anyone? Guys, 2 more example we need. Come on, 2 more. Then only we'll be going ahead. Okay, DDoS attack, threat detection. So in threat detection, can you be more specific? DDoS, yes, we can identify DDoS. Cryptocurrency, but what in cryptocurrency? Lateral movement, yes, correct. Okay, one more and then we are moving to the other slide. Port scanning and ID, yes, correct. Okay, so we'll be discussing, I have few examples which I have kept for the later slide. Identification of malware, that already we have put in the slide, that we can identify whether the binary is malicious or not. But yes, you can extend that, you can club that. You will be also looking into the binary, and also you will be looking to the traffic which is generated by that particular binary. So you can club 2 things, network part and the binary analysis part, right? Okay, but now let us discuss on this, okay, we will be coming to the use case later. First, let us complete the stages of the this machine learning. So first stage was to identify the problem statement. Second was to identify the data set. Okay, so once we identify the data set, now let me show you how the data set will look like. Yeah. So for if I talk about IDS, this is how your data set will look like. One of the example. Okay. So if you see this person, what this person has done, he has performed certain attacks. Okay, these are the different attacks which has been performed, and that person has recorded PCAP file, and then he has hosted PCAP file on the cloud so that other researcher can download. And this is how basically your data which should be going in as an input. So for malware, if you look, it will be your binaries, malicious binaries, right? Okay. So once you identify data, so we will be talking more about network traffic, because I guess most of you have studied networks in your master, so we'll be sticking to that particular part so that it will be easy for you to correlate. So once we identify the data set, we will be dividing the data set into the 3 parts, that is your training part, validation part, and your test part. So in training part, what we will be doing is, let's say I have 1,000 instance. So major part I will be utilizing it for the training part. So out of that 1,000 instance of flow, I will let's say use 600 for training part, let's say 200 for validation part, and 200 for testing part. Now what is validation and what is testing? So with those 600 instances, you will be training your model. Okay, so after training the model, if you want to evaluate that whether the model is performing good or not, you will be doing that thing on the validation part. Why validation part? Because then you need to fine tune certain variable part, or you need to fine tune your algorithm. So that is the reason we need validation part. Now see, if we use the same instance which has been used in the training part, then we are doing kind of cheating, right? We are training the model with the instance, and we are testing the model with the same instance with which we have trained. So that will be a very biased result which will be coming out. So that is the kind of cheating. So what we want to do is, we want to test our model onto the data which has not been shown earlier to the model. So that is the reason validation is included. So validation will help us to fine tune the model. Now once we have done the fine tuning, we again will retest that whether it will be effective into the real problem, real scenario or not. And hence we require the third third group of set, which is your testing set. Okay, I hope this is clear. Okay, so now the pre-processing step. So ideally, if we take example of real world scenario, and let's say let's not talk about the cyber scenario for time being. So in real world scenario, there are mostly 2 kind of data. First is your structured data, second is your unstructured data. and your machine learning algorithms will always take maths, digits into as an input. So let's say if I want to feed this particular image, first I need to convert this particular image into mathematical form, right? So if you see over here in the left hand side image, the pixels which are white has been highlighted with number 1. The pixels which are in black has been highlighted with 0, and the pixels which are in gray is around, is in between 0 and 1, right? Based on the brightness of that particular pixel. So what we are doing is, if there is an unstructured data, we will try to form a kind of a structure. We will try to, convert that into a mathematical form, and then we will be injecting that particular data into your machine learning algorithm. Now, this also applies to your cybersecurity scenario. So again, we will be looking into the later slide that how it is effective, but you need to remember this, that your image can be converted into mathematical form, and then it can be feeded. Same goes with your video. Your video can also be feeded in a similar form by converting the video into mathematical form. And on the right hand side, the example which we have seen, that source port, destination port, this is already in the numerical form, it is already in the structured form, so we require very less pre-processing in that kind of scenarios, right? Okay, now in training, so what exactly I am doing in the training phase? So what I'm doing is, let's say this image, right? So if you see the row is having 28 columns. So if you see, it is 28 by 28 matrix. So if you multiply 28 by 28, it is 784 inputs, right? So those 784 inputs will be going into your first layer of the neural network. And on the output, if I want to predict whether the number is 0 or 9, so based on your requirements, your output will be defined. So here, as you see, while training, what I am doing is I am feeding the data, and I am also feeding the answers. If you recall the first slide, right? I am feeding data, and I am feeding answers. So I'm feeding 784 points, and I'm also telling that it is number 2. So in training phase, what will happen is, when it will go from left to right, it is known as forward propagation. So if you see, there is intermediate layers. So those intermediate layers will be having some variable component in it, right? So, first pass through will happen from left to right, and when it will reach to the right hand side, it will check whether the prediction which has been made is correct or not. So it is true, and if the prediction was not true, the back propagation will take place, and in back propagation, the intermediate weights will get readjusted. So now, as we train with more and more example, that weights will start to stabilize, and the results will be more fine-tuned. So that is how we are training the model. And once the model is trained with the ample examples, what we are doing is we are saving those weights, and that is what we call it, that our model has been trained, and we have saved the model. Basically, the model is ready to deploy in the real-time scenario. So basically, that weights matters, the variable component matters, right? And that is the whole game. Basically, that are your rules in a way. In testing, what happens is, when you supply, so in testing, what you are doing is you are not giving the label, because that is what we are expecting from the model, right? So we will only be giving the 784 inputs. Now, because the weight has already been adjusted, the output will be this, it will be in the form of probability. So if you see, there are 10 output, it is 9, sorry, my bad, it is 9 outputs. So the output will be a matrices which will be of 10 entries, but for each and every entry there will be probability. The sum of, if you do the sum of all those matrices, it will be 1. So what it will be doing is, it will be giving you a probability that this particular algorithm thinks that 50% chances are that what the image has been fed is number 9. Okay. And again, there will be some other probability for some other, let's say for 0, because if you see, 9 also has 0 part in it, right? So there will be some more probability which will be coming into that 0 also. But by default, what it will do is, it will choose the label based on the maximum probability, right? Now we will see that, how it is effective in our cybersecurity problem also. Yeah, so this is the logic how it works. Basically, it will try to identify that, which neurons are getting activated. Again, if time permits, I have a demo also. If time permits, I will show you that exactly how you can segregate the domains, and how we can see that what all neuron has learned. So if you see in 9, first and the third neuron in the last layer are getting activated. Now, if it is digit 1, then ideally the first neuron will not get activated, the third neuron will get activated. I hope that makes sense, right? If you see third neuron, it is 1 sign. If you see the first neuron, it is 0. So if you feed in 0, the first neuron will get activated, third will get deactivated, right? So this is how your neurons are learning the pattern in the data, basically. Okay, so I hope I have also explained that how these things are work. So if anyone has any questions, we can take a pause and we can take the questions. Data exfiltration, okay. These are the use case. Any questions? Brief on.
Hello.
Yes.
Like as you explained previously, the intermediate nodes and forward propagation, backward propagation,
Right.
this all will be presenting in the neural networks.
Right.
So how can we differentiate a questionnaire or any user case, like in the particular situation, whether we can use a neural network algorithms or normal machine learning algorithms? So how to differentiate this?
Yeah. So as I told you in the earlier slide, that if you have more data, then it is good that you go for your deep learning. Why? Because that particular algorithm will by default figure out which are the features which are kind of good to detect the correct label. If you go for machine learning, what you are doing is, because we have less amount of data, you can kindly accordingly select the model. Again, at first instance, you will not be able to identify which is the correct algorithm, which is the suitable algorithm for your particular problem statement. So you need to, it is a trial and error thing, to be honest. You need to, again, if you see over here, the other challenge is to identify that what should be the number of neurons into the intermediate layer, or rather how many intermediate layers should be there in between, right? So in many of the problem statements, you can get the result with just one neural network, one hidden layer. And in many of the problem statements, you need to add more and more neural network. So again, it depends on the problem. If the problem is more complex, then you need more intermediate layer and more number of neurons per layer. And if the problem statement is not complex, then your less number of neurons and less number of intermediate layer will also do the job. So it again depends on the program. You need to do trial and error and then get the results. So there is no hard and fast way to determine that. Any other questions?
Is it even same for the machine learning algorithms?
Yeah, in machine
Like
learning
different
also,
algorithms may present different algorithms may present different efficiencies in the machine learning algorithm.
Exactly. So again, it depends. If you see, yeah. So as I told you, there are algorithms using which you will be able to plot your learning onto the 2D graph. So based on that graph also, you can get an understanding that how your algorithm will perform. So that can be an approach also to determine that which will be more suitable for your problem statement. Okay. Now let us see what are the challenges. So the reality of applying machine learning in cybersecurity is really complicated. Okay. First is benign network traffic is almost never normal. Now let's say if you are trying to apply, let's say, IDS, right? If you are trying to build an IDS, so in IDS, what you are doing is you will be forming the baseline thing. So in baseline, you need a normal traffic. So if you try to directly apply in a real world scenario, and if you assume that whatever data is coming is benign, now in that benign data also there can be traces of some malicious thing which we might not identify. But if that mistakenly that malicious part will go in the training part, then it is I mean, you are spoiling the model basically, right? Because the malicious part is going as an labeled as a benign part. So in a way, you are training the machine in a wrong way. So definitely that is an issue that you should be able to get clean data. So if you want to form baseline, you need clean data, right? So that is one of the challenge. Second is adversaries and their tactics are always moving. So there is no silver bullet, as we all know. So adversaries are evolving their techniques. So if there is new technique today, then again we need to retrain the model. right? It is not a thing that, you know, the model which we have trained earlier a year back will also be able to mitigate the things in today, right? Every false positive cost time and money. So not necessary that your machine learning algorithm will give you 100% accuracy, but let's say 80%, 90, 95%, it again depends. So if there is false positive, it will definitely, if it is consuming your time and money, right? And the fourth is insight must be both accurate and actionable. So again, they have given an example of SOAP that, you know, because this is a black box model, right? You don't get a clear understanding that how machine has detected it. So again, because we don't have clear insight that on what basis the machine learning algorithm has worked upon, then it is really tedious. But again, we will see that how you can figure out that, you know, which are the features which are kind of making impact, or, you know, which are contributing more in your training. So we'll see that how it works. Okay. The other problem is basically your underfitting and overfitting. So if you see, the ideal scenario will be the central one. Very good curve, but definitely if you see, you know, in zero portion also you find some X. So that is your false positive things, right? So that definitely you cannot achieve 100% accuracy. So definitely there will be some errors. But what is underfitting? So underfitting is basically, if you see, it is too simple. So the red line indicates the function which is the output of your machine learning algorithm. So you will not be able to understand, the model is not able to bifurcate the data clearly. So again, if you have chosen the wrong model, you might see the underfitting into it. And if you choose now what is overfitting? This is again interesting. So if you see the overfitting, while training the algorithm, it will work very good on, you know, your training part. It will also work very good on your validation part, but it will fail to give you good result on your test accuracy. Why? If you train model more and more on the same data, it will get used to that particular data which you have fed, and then it is kind of, you know, cramming the things. So the person who is cramming more and more, that person has that limited knowledge to that particular thing which that person has crammed, right? If you ask something new, logical thing, that person won't be able to answer. Same goes with the overfitting part. So if a new thing will come, I know it will not be able to judge in a very good way. So the better approach is the central one, right? So it is not falling into underfitting, it is not falling into the overfitting part. So these are the domains in which, cybersecurity domains in which you can apply your machine learning. Windows malware, function recognition, phishing also, spam detection, IDS, DGA. So the example with the puzzle which we did can fall under DGA, right? Domain generated algorithms. And network traffic analysis, protocol classification, application classification, botnet detection, cryptography, steganography, and stegananalysis. Now let us move on to the use case. So let us come to the web application attacks. So if you see, first one is your normal query, wherein, you know, 1 to 3 is the, sorry, post ID is your parameter, and 1 to 3 is the value for that particular parameter. So in SQL injection, the definitely the payload part will get complex. XSS, again, it will be complex. Now what generally you do is, you write rules in the snot, you write rules in the WAF, right? But those rules are either it is an hard-coded rule that, you know, if I find alert or if I find script, it should block the thing, or it can be in regex. Then, you know, you try to figure out that if this many times this particular special character is able to come into that payload, then, you know, that should be tagged as a malicious. But now if you see, if you write regex, if any human analyst write that particular regex, it is kind of easy for an attacker to evade the regex, right? So now what machine learning is doing is, so we did an exercise, like, you know, 2 years back in GFS, one of the students, we worked upon a project. So what we did was, we collected the payloads of SQL injection, we collected the payload of XSS, lots of payload, and then we trained the model. And we were able to get around 90 to 95% accuracy. We tried different models. So what this particular models will do is, it will, so you, in a way you can say that it will form complex regex in itself, right? And that regex will be, you know, kind of act as a rule, and that will prevent more number of data. Because see, if you write with your human intelligence, if you write that, you know, we are focusing on only on, let's say, script and alert tags, then it is, you know, kind of, easy to evade. But if machine, because machine will also be able to figure out the underlying pattern, that number of single quotes, number of hash, because if you do double encoding, it might be sometimes it might evade the existing regex. But this machine learning algorithm will definitely able to identify those unknown payloads also, which will act as an payload for your SQL injection. I hope I am making sense, right? So same it goes with XSS and some other web attacks. Even there are certain papers I came across which are able to detect XXE and those modern web attacks also. Yeah, so there is a huge scope of applying machine learning in web application attacks. The second use case is botnet example. So this, most of you, those who attended my lecture in network, we have taken this example, right, for network analysis. So in botnet, what will happen is, let's say if your machine is infected with the botnet. So what that particular botnet will do is, it will try to contact to CNC, and it will ask whether there is any command for me to know, for me to execute or not. So now in 90% use cases, it will just query. And in 10% cases, it will receive some command from CNC center to perform certain task. So in that 90% time, the size of the request which is being made and the the time duration between the two, communication which is initiated by the botnet will be same, right? So inter-arrival time and the size of the packet will be same, right? So that is how you can try to identify logically. And if you see on the right hand side, I have shown you that how your T-sharp can help you to extract out those features. This is a very simple example. Again, the things can be more complex also. So here if you see IP length, it is 89, 89 and 89. If you see the delta in frame time, it is around 1.06 or 1.07 in each and every use case, right? So this is a pattern which a human brain is able to interpret. So definitely machine will be able to interpret it. And if we supply more number of features, the machine learning algorithms might be able to find certain more patterns. I hope this is also making sense, right? Okay, and this is how the decision boundary will be formed. Okay, just an same example. Yeah. Now coming to network traffic classification or malware binary representation. So now I am coming to that point which we have discussed, that in training part there was image and that image was feeded into the deep learning algorithms. So now your network traffic can also be converted into the images and it can be feeded. Now if you see on left hand side, there is a 4 instance which has been converted into the image. And if you see visually also, you can utilize there is a pattern in it, right? And both can be differentiated easily. Now the challenge is, let's say if you have a PKF file. So what I did exactly, let me show you what has been done here. Any other questions? If possible, please highlight feature reduction when it is required. That will be too technical. We can take up in some next session. So let's say I'm picking up any of the flow. Yeah. So this is your, conversation, right? This is one-way conversation. So there was no one-way conversation. This is the entire conversation, right? So what you are doing is you are taking this particular data, you are converting this particular, you are saving this particular data, and then you are converting this data into hexadecimal form. Now, if you take hexadecimal form, a single character of hexadecimal form can be represented using 8 bits, right? So based on those things, you will be able to, form. Now let's say, the total size is 784 bits. So, and if there is a particular communication which is less than 784, so what you can do, you can pad the extra bits with 0. So if you see in the first example, the flow content was less compared to the frame which we have taken. So what we did was we just padded in the 0 bytes just to ensure that each and every instance which is going into the machine learning algorithm has the same length, right? So this is how you can do network traffic classification in your whether you want to identify malicious traffic, whether you want to identify that whether this particular traffic is originated from a particular application like Skype, or let's say whether it is IoT traffic. So that kind of classification can be done. So any question in this? Anyone?
I have a question regarding machine learning and the steganography.
Okay.
So watermarking is kind of a cryptography where we'll be interchanging bits in an image.
Right.
So how can we use machine learning here? How can we use machine learning in this type of scenario?
Okay. So see, logically, if I try to answer that question is, let's say, what we are doing is we are trying to embed, for example, what we are doing is we are embedding text file into an image file, right? So logically, if we do manual analysis, what we do is we will take that particular image file into hex editor, and we'll try to analyze if we find some content in it, right? So same thing goes over to the machine learning, that if you feed machine learning algorithms which benign, that is your genuine JPG files, and if you label that this is a genuine JPG file, and then you feed in the steganographed JPG file, wherein if you, let's say if you steganographed it with the text file, so definitely if you see when you embed the text file will also have the signature of it. So that will also get reflected in your, when you do hexadecimal analysis. And if the text, if your algorithm is the steganographic algorithm is not stronger, then whatever is the content in the text file will also get reflected into the when you open the file into hexadecimal file. So now when you are supplying this file to the machine learning algorithms, the way we humans are able to interpret, we humans are able to identify this particular signatures. So similarly, now see, we don't know that what features machine will be looking for, right? So it is because it is completely based on the mathematics, but definitely it will recognize the pattern, because if we human can recognize it, then definitely machine should be able to recognize it. I hope I have done the justification to that. But I have a question over here with this particular example. Now I told that, this will work on the payload part, right? But let's say if the payload is encrypted, because if there is an SSL communication, then definitely, we will not be able to find certain pattern in the payload. Then how do you think we will be able to differentiate it? Or whether it will be feasible to apply machine learning algorithm or not? Would anyone like to answer? Whether it is possible or not to apply machine learning in that scenario when the traffic is encrypted? Because definitely, I hope I'm making sense what I'm trying to convey, right? Because we will not be able to get this pattern because the traffic will be encrypted. Because if the traffic is, let's say, HTTP, you will be able to bifurcate that, HTTP and let's say FTP, you will be easily able to bifurcate, because both are, unencrypted traffic, and you will be able to find certain pattern in the payload. But if the traffic is is encrypted, how you are able to bifurcate it? I hope there should be a way, yeah. But any idea why? No, I don't think so. Okay. Any other answer? Anyone else? Okay. So that is the beauty of machine learning algorithm. Even I thought that, it should not be able to apply, but when I applied it, it was able to bifurcate. And then when I did a manual analysis using reverse engineering, I got to know that, because when you communicate to a particular server, right, it has signature. I mean, if you look at the CA certificate, there is certain signature. Let's say if I am talking to Amazon Web Service. So in Amazon Web Service, there is certain the component of Amazon.com or AWS.com, and there is certain unique pattern in the certificate of Amazon. Let's say certification authority or some other thing. So that we might not strike. We human might not get a clear understanding that this can also be an parameter which can bifurcate the things, right? But yeah, it works. So definitely some SSL, the initial part of the SSL communication, it has some hidden pattern. So yeah, so again, we have proved that, if we apply machine learning algorithms, it can also help us to invent few things, because we might not discover the pattern yet, but machine learning can help us to discover pattern if there is any. Right? And that is how you can reverse engineer and get an idea that on what basis your machine learning is able to identify it. We will also see, if time permits, that how it can be done. Okay. Oh, we are done with the session. So yeah, if you have any questions, otherwise I will show you one demo if there is time. We have already done the lecture for 1 hour and more. So any questions, anyone? How much accurate it could be? Okay, I hope. So you're talking about SSL, Saurav? Deep packet inspection won't work because if the payload is encrypted, it is tough, definitely tough. We have some interesting demo also. I will show you that how things are happening. And meanwhile, yeah, I have a feedback form for this particular session. So take few minutes and this will motivate me to take further session. Meanwhile, we take the questions. The others can fill the feedback form. For encrypted one, the one which I tried, I was able to, get around 90-95% accuracy. So yeah, again, it depends. See, now if you take an application which is communicating to Amazon web server, if there are two different applications which is communicating to the same, the entity which is owned by the same person, right, a same company, then definitely, chances will be less to bifurcate. But if let's say you are comparing Google Meet and Alexa's communication, then it definitely will be easily able to bifurcate because certificate will be quite different of Amazon and it will be quite different of Google. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? Okay, so let me show you one interesting thing. No, not this one. Oh, no. I am not getting that particular, not this one. Yeah, this part. Okay, so this is a visualization of your convolution neural network basically. So if you feed in the image of a cat, this is how it will look like. See, yeah. So the initial layers, let me go back to slide to give you a more understanding. Okay, slides. Yeah. So let's say if there are two, intermediate layers, right? So after this one intermediate layer, what all things these neurons are looking at? After in the second layer, what all these neurons are looking at? So if I want to visualize that, this is that particular visualization. After first layer, if you see the edges are getting visualized. Here it is written, see, the first layer act as a collection of various edges detection. At that state, the actions are still retaining almost all of the information present in that initial picture. And then when you move from left side to right hand side, they are focusing more on a particular part. See, images are getting blurred and they are focusing on, let's say, on left corner. One neuron will be focusing on the left hand part, the other neuron might focus on the right hand side part. And if you see, then we humans will not be able to interpret it, right? And this black box basically indicate that this particular neuron has not triggered. So if you take dog instead of cat, in that scenario, this neurons will get triggered, and this some of the other neurons will not get triggered. Okay. And other interesting thing, as I told you, how machine learning can help you to invent few things. See, now see, if I am supplying this image into a classifier. So classifier is basically to identify whether the image is of dog, cat, or let's say elephant, right? So let's say it is giving you the correct output that is it is of an elephant, right? But now I want to get an understanding that on which part made this machine to think that this is an elephant, right? So that again there some research has been done. Yeah, see, if you see the trunks and the ears, which has been highlighted with the red portion, is giving a machine learning understanding that this particular picture belongs to this particular animal, right? So now if you are applying, now see, what you can do is you can reverse engineer the thing. Now if you are applying, let's say if you have 100 features, right? And if you feed into the algorithm, and if you identify which features are contributing the most to the algorithm, you will be easily able to identify. And let's say instead of features, if you are supplying the images into it, using this kind of technique, you will be able to identify that which part or which particular portion of that particular image is helping us to identify the thing. So in malware analysis, if you convert your binary into your, let's say, image representation, so when you reverse engineer in this particular fashion, you will get an understanding that which particular portion of the malware binary is helping machine learning algorithm to bifurcate the binary, whether it is benign or whether it is malicious, right? So yeah, this is what I had for this session. So yeah, if you have any question, please feel to ask. Otherwise, we are done here. Please take some minutes to fill feedback. And if I have taught you in the past, then definitely I have also included a portion where you can give certain comments in the lectures which I have taken in the GFSU. So yeah, feel free to do that. Yeah, Rushi, you were telling something?
Jaideep, I had a practical question regarding the computational power that is required. So let's say I had worked with Imperva web application firewall, which detected the SQL injection using the ML-based integrated algorithm.
Okay.
So, but the issue is like Imperva itself that costed 2 crores, and apart from that, if they integrated some 15 to 20 websites for SSL offloading, it was like the CPU utilization was to the max, and out of some 300 sites, they could only integrate 15 sites use with 2 crores of amount
Investment,
and
right?
investment. Yeah. So once you say that first is power is required for training your algorithm, that would be from your side. But second is, would this algorithm be self-learning, and how much power would it require when it is operational in real time, like
Got it.
when it is detecting? Yeah.
Right. So see, now if we talk about let's say regarding SQL injection only. So in SQL injection, let's say what script kiddies do is they generally run some tools like SQL map, or let's say in corporate also now majorly if there is deadline, so they generally run Qnetics and other such tools, right? So what we did before 2 years was we collected payloads from SQL map, we collected payloads from Qnetics, we collected payloads from certain other well-known tools, and using those samples we did a kind of training. And we were able to get, as I told you, around 90 to 95%. Rather, it was more if we do ensembling learning. So that training, if you see, for problem statements like XSS or SQL injection, I think it is a one-time learning. Okay. So in that scenario, definitely, the training, the amount which will be costing is mainly of regarding the training part. So if we are doing good training, and if the problem statement is of like SQL injection or XSS detection, if we have a good model, then definitely I think it is a one-time training cost, and then it will be a feasible solution. Whereas in the other side, if I take example of, let's say DOS or DDoS attack, so daily, let's say, in IRCTC, if we take example, so in IRCTC, when Tatkal booking opens, the load is at peak, and later days the load is normal, right? So if I compare same example before an year, so definitely before a year the traffic would have been less. If I compare today's traffic, it will be definitely more, right? So that in those scenarios, it is a continuous learning to make what is a normal thing for that particular application. So again, it depends on the problem statement whether we should be going for a continuous learning or whether we should be going for a one-time learning. I hope I have done justice.
Yeah, that's fine.
Any other questions, guys? Okay, so I guess no more questions. Then we are good to end this session over here. And I would really urge other, our ex-students and current students to take this kind of, seminars at least in a 15 days or in a week. It is good, no? Like what you have learned, others can also get benefit out of it. Yeah. So okay guys, then I am stopping the presentation. I will wait for few more seconds if anyone has any question.
Hey,
Yeah.
Jaideep sir,
Yes.
Shantanu here. Yeah.
Yes.
Jaideep sir, I asked a question I think a couple of minutes ago.
Sorry, I missed that part.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, I have gone into that particular application when like a few days back. Also, we have a discussion on that part, right? So I have not done an in-depth study, but what I have learned about that particular part is what it is doing is what we generally do is we generally do brute force on that particular part, right? When we so basically that particular application which you have mentioned, what it does is basically. What we do it works with Wi-Fi. It makes Wi-Fi cracking of password more easier, right? So what ideally we do is we generally disconnect the particular client and we capture the handshake, and when we do, and then we do brute force on it, right? So what that particular application is doing is it is doing brute force, but in a smarter way, so that the cracking can be done in a less amount of time. But again, I have not done an in-depth study that on what logic they have done it, but this is what the application is doing as per my initial analysis of that application.
Yeah. So actually,
And
so that's what I was trying. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. So basically, so I do understand that they are doing some kind of brute force with some logic, and that's something. So I think they've also explained a bit on the how they're brute forcing on their website. But the thing is, since I'm not I'm not very good with machine learning. The guy starts explaining machine learning, and then I just lost. Like I'm just lost. I don't understand what's happening after second paragraph, basically. So I was trying to understand in million terms that what it's trying to do, or maybe if I can so they are doing brute force. Then can I do or can I do something similar for the Kerberos thing, or can I do something for password spraying? I tried to understand.
Okay. Got it. So see, let me explain you the other way. So I also went to that particular blog, but again, if you see, there are a lot many subdomains in machine learning also, like machine learning, deep learning, and then there is something called reinforcement learning. So if I'm not wrong, they are using reinforcement learning, which I have not yet explored much. But let me give you another example regarding cryptography and other such things. So machine learning. This is my particular, my analysis or interpretation that machine learning can also be applied in checking whether the cryptographic algorithm is strong enough or not. Now, how it can be done? Let me give you an example. So let's say, if you develop an hashing algorithm, right? And let me just give you an idea that, the output of that particular hashing algorithm is, let's say, for example, is 4 bits. If it is 4 bits, the complexity is 2 raised to 4, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So in input, if I give, so it is basically there is something called birthday paradox also. So what birthday paradox explains is basically if there are, let's say, 150 person in a room, then if I get the birth date of each and every person, then there are good chances that the birth date, some of the birth date might collision may occur, right? But if I increase the number of person to 500, then definitely the amount of collision will be more, right? So similarly, like if we take example of cryptography hash or any other cryptography, that the output size also matters. But now if you want to check that how good is the algorithm, so what you can do is you can what you can do is you can give input to an algorithm and you will be having output, right? So you will generate lots of pair of input and lots of pair of output, and then you can feed this input and output into the machine learning algorithm, and then you can try to give in the output as an input to the algorithm and try to identify whether it is able to identify any known collision, any other input which is colliding with some other input or not.
Okay.
Are you able to understand what I'm trying to convey?
I understand what you're trying to say, but I also thought of this. But now, since you've answered this question, now I have 2 more additional questions on it. One, okay, so how is it different from rainbow tables? Second question, I know that. So like how is it different from and let's say and by by inputting all those rainbow tables inside the machine learning, then am I trying to break the NTLM hashing algorithm? Is that what you're trying to say? Because
in a way, yes. So see, what we are trying to do is, yeah, continue.
Yeah, so and if that's the case, and if that's the case, then did the Panagochi break the WPA hashing algorithm? Because that's
No.
I know WPA is a different algorithm, but then it has similar strength to NTLM. So did Panagochi break break NTLM essentially? So that's a chain of questions which I am not able to understand. That's how that's why I'm like, I don't know how it works, and in a sense. So,
I
like,
got it.
can you
See,
explain these three
okay.
things?
Yeah. So see, first of all, see how it is different than the rainbow table. So in rainbow tables, what you are doing is you are pre-computing hash, and then you are again doing the brute force thing, right?
Yeah.
But here, what machine learning we are trying to do is, so if you see, before WPA2, there was WPA2, before that it was WEP, and now people are also talking that WPA2 can be cracked. Now it is, we are moving into the stage of WPA3, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, earlier it was considered that MD5 was a kind of an, good algorithm, but now it is kind of collisions are occurring, right? So what I am trying to convey is, the algorithm, this algorithms has been defined by really good mathematicians, right, who are really good at mathematics, right? And definitely it is not that easy to break, but saying that now we have good computation amount. So now see why these algorithms are working. If we take example of hashing, so the hashing has one intrinsic property, that is it cannot be reversed, right? But if it cannot be reversed, my question is, can't we find any other input which will be having the same collision? Not with brute forcing. See, I'm not talking about brute forcing here. I'm talking about to exploit any underlying pattern. If any mathematician has made any mistake, then because we have more number of computing power, then we can just check. Again, see, I'm not claiming that it will definitely, machine learning will definitely get a success, but yeah, there is a possibility. If there is underlying flaw in the pattern, then definitely machine learning can help us to identify that pattern. So I came across some research papers also. So they were, but I have not gone in depth yet. But yeah, people are trying to apply machine learning, deep learning into cryptography also.
Okay, I understand what you're trying to say.
So again, see, I'm not trying to so this is what I'm trying to make it clear. We are not brute forcing. We are trying to identify any underlying pattern if there is any.
Okay,
right?
so
So that's it. How the approach are different,
So basically, we'll try to find a pattern, and based on that pattern,
exactly.
Then in Panagochi, what you are trying to say, or what I understand is, Panagochi finds some pattern of passwords, and then using that pattern as an input.
So
now the Panagochi is trying to brute force. So since it has that intelligence built in, right? This is how passwords are generally set inside Wi-Fi. And that's how Panagochi is trying to get passwords much more efficiently than normal brute forcing. Is that what you're trying to say?
So in other way, you can say that, let's say for brute force you are trying 1 lakh attacks. So by understanding the pattern, it is telling that this 50,000 password, there is no possibility. So if you recall in the one of the slides and the diagram, I told you that the output of machine learning will be the probability. So based on that probability, it will try that for this particular password the probability is higher. But it is probability. It might work, it might not work. So what it will do is, what I believe is that it will remove out the passwords which has zero probably. What I see the intuition behind the developers.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
but again, see, I have not gone in depth, so I might be wrong. This is just the initial intuition which I'm trying to see.
So I request you to have a quick check on that, because I still have a lot of questions based on that, and I have some cool ideas based on. I'm working on a lot of tools these days, so I want to work more in more offensive pattern and use ML. But then I tried learning it, but then it just wraps it. So the concept is not wrapping around my head, and that's why I'm not been using till now. on that thing.
Right. Because there is lots of mathematics and statistics involved in the, this understanding machine learning and deep
Mathematics is
learning. Yeah.
easy, dude. Mathematics is easy. The concept is
Yeah.
difficult. Okay.
Okay, so I'll check out like.
Moving on to the next question. Do you have any thoughts on uses of ML in offensive in offensive? So while you were going through the examples, I'll say 90% of those examples of
Defensive.
uses of ML were based on detection capabilities and all sorts of that stuff, right? And
Right.
I even online when I see ML uses of ML, 99% of them are basically detection based strategies. Do you have any offensive based strategies to use ML?
Yeah, see, this is, I hope you are able to see my screen. So I came across one more, thing. There was one black hat presentation wherein, the researcher has tried to optimize that how Metasploit can be used. The combination of, Metasploit and I don't recall exactly. So what the person has done was Deep Exploit, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, this was that. Let us just check out. Yeah, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, you can check out this Deep Exploit.
Okay, I'll do that. Yeah. Okay.
So what it is doing is, because what we generally do is we feed in the Nmap scan into Metasploit and then we try to identify, right, that which kind of modules can be applicable. So what this person has done is the person has automated different phases of this pen testing cycle, and in one of the pen testing cycle, that person has automated that which particular payload will be more suitable and all those stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So this might prove helpful because this is one of the use case of offensive how it can be used.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know about this. I'll definitely check this one out, and maybe if I'm able to use it, then I'll make some tool and I'll give you some credits on that as well.
No, it's fine. Like, so definitely you can we can do this kind of research, and like we can involve some other students also if they're kind of interested. So that was the motive of the session, because this like machine learning AI is booming. So why not to leverage those things into and try to apply these things. So
yeah, I do have some ideas as well. I don't want to just make it public at this time, but I think I can discuss with you.
Definitely we can discuss upon that. Like, yeah. And if anyone else, any other party, right. And if any other participant is also having some idea, we can discuss and we can take up as a kind of project. Yeah, that can be a win-win situation.
Yeah, definitely, that would be great. Yeah, thank you, Jadid, sir, for your time. Yeah.
Any other questions, guys? It is 1.5 hours, I guess. Yeah, we've done it. Okay, thank you, guys. We'll end our session over here. Yeah, signing off, guys. See you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Jadid sir, I'm sorry. I just want to know if you have a Twitter account. Maybe I can follow your Twitter.
I have, but I'm not much active on it.
Okay.
Now
Thank
I'm planning to, but right now the focus is on research. So once I'm like out of research, we'll try to.
Sure, no problem. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Let us end this. Leave the call. Okay.